Brett, thanks for joining today. Copper is already a sophisticated performance organization. You run incrementality tests, you think a lot about causal lift, but you're not yet using adjusted ROAS in your day-to-day decisioning. Before we dive in, how do you currently evaluate retargeting performance?
That's a great question. Typically, I'll run like an incrementality through you guys through Addictive, and let you handle kind of the uplift scenario, and then we'll take like control tests and the incrementality. We'll take total costs and the difference between the control and test, and see like what the adjusted ROAS will look like.
Got it. So let's jump into what adjusted ROAS actually is. So that's exactly the gap that we're trying to solve. Traditional platform ROAS overstates the contribution of retargeting because attribution counts all revenue after an ad exposure, even revenue from users who would have converted anyway, as you know. So adjusted ROAS corrects this by discounting the revenue of would have converted users using machine learning models trained on your past incrementality tests. Think of it as adjusted ROAS equals ROAS times predicted incremental share. It's not a replacement for holdout tests. It's a continuous model refresh proxy that brings incrementality into daily optimization.
Yeah, I mean, I think, having worked with you guys and running incrementality, like standard incrementality for years, I think this is probably the right approach. Traditionally, how I would think about it would be, in the most simplistic way, would be running what I described before at the point of churn, and then having you guys basically like with a set time limit on how much revenue you could recoup. So a more sophisticated way of doing this without having to constantly run tests, I think is obviously on the forefront of where we want to be as retargeters.
Yeah, the idea behind it is transforming the revenue numerator of ROAS, not the cost or the attribution logic, so that it reflects predicted incremental revenue, not total revenue, if that makes sense. So in terms of how similar users behave, walk me through kind of the ML part and how you think about it. And what signals actually inform your model, Copper?
Um, I would say like most of the time we're looking at what type of down funnel engagement they're doing.
Mhm.
Well, for example, with Copper, we're a rewards app that wants users to come back in and make traditionally like game installs or follow up on further actions of games that they've already downloaded that are important to the advertisers. And probably, if we're going for a traditional Copper revenue, we want that valuable user who's generated some kind of value in the past to do more of that value, which is a game install for us. So that's a
Got it.
clear that's definitely the clear and obvious signal for an ML to kind of train off of. It's what our most of my, UA campaigns are going to train off of as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So for adjusted ROAS, the model comes directly from thousands of users who participated in the past holdouts. And typically what we've seen is those users reveal two patterns: ad addressable users who convert even without ads, and then ad addressable users who only convert when exposed to ads. From those labeled outcomes, the model leans conversion likelihood patterns based on signals like recency of activity, prior spend tiers, genre-specific behavioral probability, session and engagement, and density, and things like that. Then for in-flight campaigns, every attributed revenue event is scored. And we kind of look at how similar is this user to past users who showed incremental uplift or to those who converted anyway. And then that similarity score becomes a probability weight that discounts the revenue.
I'll just say amazing. I think it's kind of crazy work that you guys are doing to kind of advance the field here. It's been a very rudimentary field. So I think it's really cool to see some of the things that I would say like a traditional, very advanced DSP would come at kind of the same language, right? To have like a retargeting come up with the same type of weighting system and tech is impressive.
Well, I appreciate that. If you think about a simple way to think about what the model might say, is that we've seen this pattern before. They likely convert even in a holdout, so we apply a smaller incremental weight, and that's kind of how we boil it down or frame it. So in terms of the formula and the framework, we look at adjusted ROAS, which equals incremental revenue predicted divided by spend, where incremental revenue predicted equals attributed revenue times incrementality weight. And then it gets pretty complicated, but weights range from zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.8, depending on user profile, because adjusted ROAS is designed to be a conservative calibration tool, not to inflate value. We cap contributions to avoid an attribution like arms race and keep outputs directly comparable to observed lift test results. And then why adjusted ROAS helps between tests. What's one challenge you've seen in UN retargeting with holdouts?
Waiting, I would say like the biggest thing is for me is like having the holdout and the test be weighted correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can, especially in the gaming field, when you're working with like very big whale driven audiences, you can have some skews between different, your control tests. So you've got to be able to balance that correctly. And that's a pretty delicate way of, you have to have someone that's a good data scientist to typically pull those lists in a traditional holdout.
Yeah, some of the challenges we've seen in addition to that are, holdouts can be expensive. You can't run them every week. And in applying adjusted ROAS, you get some leverage in three main areas. Continuous read on incrementality. So instead of waiting 6 weeks, you get a daily directional signal. You get a bit of a smarter budget allocation. So if adjusted ROAS diverges from attributed ROAS, you can scale towards audiences and creatives where incrementality is higher. One would be predictable scaling. So your forecast stops swinging wildly. Adjusted ROAS converges towards the long-term average of your holdout results. So you can think of it a little bit like media mix modeling for retargeting, but user level, audience level, fast, inexpensive, and refreshed in real time. So effectively what it's trying to do is operate at the cadence of attribution, but think at the rigor of incrementality is a fancy way to say it. To coffer. If tomorrow I said, let's deploy adjusted ROAS, what does implementation look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would throw back on you. Like, what would it, I'm an active addictive partner. I would say everything you're describing is something that I would want to implement right away. What are the needs that I need to push back to you? Do you need some kind of, additional lists, additional criteria, additional creative? Do you need like, do you run with AppsFlyer? Do you need AppsFlyer audiences
Mhm.
as a must serve? So what is it that you would require to like, I guess, unlock some of the tech that you just described?
Yeah, absolutely. So we think about it in some basic steps. Step one is to share past incrementality test data. So we ingest holdout structures and outcomes, both wins and losses. Even 2 or 3 tests are enough to bootstrap it. The second one would be to map your retargeting audiences. So we already do that together, but we can classify cohorts by lapse days, purchase recency, pay level, like you talked about, whales, VIP, mid spenders, app touch sessions, depth, device, and then UA versus organic sources. Those are some of the ways to break it down. Step 3 would be to train predictive incrementality models. So we do that on our end. The ML layer learns conversion without ads likelihood across cohorts. And then we begin generating adjusted ROAS in your reporting. So you'll see both ROAS and adjusted ROAS side by side. And that can all be done through AppsFlyer data like we work together with already. And so then after that, you get the benefit of using adjusted ROAS for scaling decisions and getting better directional guidance in quicker time. So let's talk about what adjusted ROAS is not. It's important to understand limitations too. So where adjusted ROAS does not replace real measurement, it's an important distinction. So it doesn't replace geotests or other causal frameworks. It doesn't replace periodic holdout tests, forensic analysis of the deepest VIP cohorts, or media mix modeling for budget setting across channels. So it's a decision support layer, but not a causal experiment. And that's an important distinction to make. So in terms of a hypothetical outcome you could look at, suppose you see attributed ROAS equals 4 and adjusted ROAS equals 1.5. I guess you could ask yourself, what does it actually tell me operationally, right?
Yeah. Tell me what it means, Cam.
So the campaign is driving revenue, but most attributed revenue is from users who likely would convert anyway. You're still positive on incrementality. 1.5 is still good, but scaling that audience further might not increase incremental value linearly. So this signals consider expanding audiences with lower attribution saturation refresh creatives to create more incremental lift, or shift budget to lapsed payers rather than active payers. And then in some rare cases, if adjusted ROAS is greater than ROAS, it's rare, but it happens when attribution undercounts influence, for example, long latency conversions. So that's usually a signal to ramp down aggressively. And I think with how UA teams change constantly, there's a lot of new creatives, new product features. What's a challenge in terms of thinking through that and applying a model like this with your day to day?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're about to do a major feature update ourselves. So, I mean, like almost the entire flow, is going to change. So we need to really think about like it's almost like a completely new app in a sense, and so it's going to be a lot of recalculation, diving into the right audiences that kind of match the new flow, and re-educate. I mean, for us, it's going to be a lot of re-education to the new flow itself. So maybe this isn't necessarily going to be an adjusted ROAS play that we come up with you next time, but more of
Mhm.
an education play to like pretty much all of our labs users.
Definitely. I mean, that's a major change, obviously. But one of the benefits of adjusted ROAS is that we can maintain it and adapt it weekly. So incrementality patterns drift, we can track that. We also integrate fresh holdout results automatically to recalibrate the weights. So obviously you need to consider that, but it is a little bit more nimble than the traditional incrementality approach.
Nice.
Well, we super appreciate the time and talking about a somewhat nerdy subject that we're very passionate about at Addictive. Do you have anything up and coming that you'd like to share with the audience?
Go check out Copper if you haven't heard of us. I'll just say that. Otherwise, I'll say go Hawks.
Sounds good. Recent Super Bowl champions. We really appreciate you taking the time and look forward to checking out Copper on the App Store.
Thanks, Cam.
Thank you.